What's up, guys? My name is Jerome, and I am the second half of Dead to Religion. So we're back for season 2, and we just want to give you guys a little piece of who we are so you can understand why we are experiencing and communicating this podcast and this information out to you guys. So our stories could help you in some small way. So my story is, I consider it a story of patience and endurance. And I say endurance because of some of the things that I endured in my life. I grew up in a small town in Louisiana, very small town in Louisiana, population less than 4,000. And the neighboring towns that are right next to the area that I grew up in, Louisiana, are literally minutes away from each other. And when I say minutes, I don't mean like 30 minutes or 10 minutes, I mean like minutes. So 5 to 6, 7 minutes away from each other. So that small town mentality kind of affected the way I grew up as a child. Who I am as a person, I always think that there's ways that you really have to just tell yourself who you are so you can grow and become a better person. And some of the lessons that I instilled in myself is that I am a child of God. I am whoever God has called me to be, which is strong and courageous. I know that with God, all things are possible, and that greater is in me than is in this world. And I say with God, all things are possible because growing up, I didn't realize it at the time. My mom, she instilled that Bible verse into me and my brothers and my family. And it started at a really young age. And I still carry this coin around that she gave me when I went off to college and I left home for the first time. And I didn't know how important it was to me. But now it's become a life verse for my family. It's Mark 10:27, with God, all things are possible. So my story isn't a shattered story, but it's not a story that is painless, because where some find pain, I've chosen to find a passion for life. So I kind of break it down into 4 quarters of life. So the first quarter would be I had an absent dad, losing my mom in the second quarter, finding out, learning that I biologically couldn't have any kids. And the last quarter would be finding out who God was calling me to be. So some of the most difficult things that in a story can be hard to discuss, but when you uncover those emotions in your story, it transforms you into being a person that could resonate and can help influence and help encourage someone else to talk through their experiences and become a better person in life. So as the quarters begin, just like any basketball analogy, Allen Iverson was my favorite basketball player growing up. So life can cross you up sometimes, but we're gonna have some fun because life is fun, and my story is about fun and encouraging and just growth. So I say one of the most vivid memories that I have growing up when I was younger, around 5 years old, is when my mom and my dad were in an argument. And during that argument, my brother and I, we were right there in the middle. And I can remember vividly, my dad turned to me and he told me that out of frustration that I wasn't his son. And that was something that obviously you never want to hear as a kid from your parents. But it's something that stuck with me until I matured later on in life and really worked through those emotions and really saw the breakthrough happen. So 2 Thessalonians 3:3, but the Lord is faithful and he will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. And what I pulled from that verse is the word protect. In that moment, as I mentioned, my brother was with me. My brother instantly became that protector in my life. Not saying that my dad was an evil one, but he just had evil spirits that just invaded him during that altercation with my wife, with my mom. So protection is one of those qualities that you can take for granted sometimes, and my brother became that for me. So it's also a time when I really developed a strong love for my mom. And I say a strong love for my mom. She sacrificed everything for me. And it became a defining moment as I looked in the future on parenthood and adulthood. And I say a defining moment because whenever I learned, which I'll fast forward a little bit and tell you a little bit about that story, is when I find out that biologically I couldn't be a father, that just left an emptiness inside of me. And I still get emotional about it, because a broken moment where you just have to trust in God and endure through the emotions that you're feeling, and know that God has a faithful plan for you. Rewinding back to my brother being my protector, he became that father figure in my childhood. I grew up, again, in a small town in Louisiana, and there was a lot of rough moments where I was considered a pretty boy because I had, really good straight hair, curly hair. I had the dimples, I had the light skin. So guys would pick on me. My brother, he's a little bit bigger, much bigger. I'm only 5'9" and my brother's 6'3", so he had that, that giant appeal where he would protect me, and I always looked at him as a father figure to step up and just be a leader for me. And it's also where my brother influenced me, because he displayed the heart of a person. And when I say the heart of a person, a lot of people will see me now and they'll see that I love and I genuinely care for people, and I'll give my heart to anyone. But I didn't have that early on, and my brother showed me that character in a person on how to love someone. He genuinely loved me from the beginning, and as I grew older, I saw that love for him, that love inside of him grow bigger and bigger, and how he treats his family and how he treats everyone around him. And I personally, I tell him this often, I consider him the heart of Jerome. So whenever I look at my heart, I see my brother strongly in it. So transitioning to the second quarter is when my stepdad entered my life during my teenage years. And that was the first time where I really saw a consistent picture of what a man looked like. Again, growing up, I had my brother, but my brother was only a year and a half, close to 2 years older than me. So we were experiencing a lot of the same emotions and not having that father figure. But my stepdad came into my life, and he changed the dynamic of what a man really looks like. Loving my mom, being the provider in the house, being a person of strong character when it came to work, and just being a man of God. I grew up, again, in Louisiana with really strong Baptist ties in a Baptist church, but I didn't have a man of God figure in my life during that time. And my stepdad stepped into that role, and he showed me what it would be like, gave me a vision of a picture of what's possible whenever you do lead your family the right way. I remember we got a camcorder. So I'm a middle child, and I have a middle child syndrome, as they say. So I needed some validation, and I would always want to be in front of the camcorder. So if you don't know, camcorders are big and bulky. They're not the small little iPhones where you can video yourself these days. But my mom and my stepdad would always pull out that camcorder, and I would always find a way to enact my personality in front of that camera. And I think that's what also allowed me to become really highly driven and find ways to challenge my siblings and become a better person where I could be the best that I could be. When I think about that moment, those moments, I lean on John 15:16, and it reads that you're chosen to do great things, no matter your situation, circumstances, family history, past mistakes, and no matter who you are, you choose to be who you are today. So you don't get to choose sometimes, but God chooses you. He anointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using His name. And again, with my stepdad being the man of God that he was during that season of my life, that power has started to resonate inside of me during that period of life. And I transitioned into the third quarter is when, again, like I said, I was a middle child. I lost sight of the God principles that God had instilled in me through my stepdad. It was a season of life where I was in my 20s. I was thinking that I still wanted to be a center of attention. I was chasing money in my work career. I was chasing a lot of females because, again, I thought that would just fulfill all the needs that I personally had for myself, and I lost sight of God and what God really had planned for me in my future. And in that season also, I noticed that it was the greatest opportunity for me to change my experiences. And during that season as well is when life started to shift in a downward trajectory for me. I was in a long-term relationship that didn't last. And it was also during that time where my mom was battling health complications, and she had been battling those health complications for a little over 7 years. Not being rooted in God, for me, really started to take a toll on me. I lost my mom during that season to cancer, to breast cancer, and I still get those emotions all the time. And I used to let it consume me, but now I understand the love and the person that my mom is still. And she's still that person in that love, because that fire and that energy and that character of positivity, that character of love, that character of putting others first before her, is the person that I've chosen to be now. And again, that season was the most difficult for me with the broken relationship, losing my mom. During that broken relationship is when I also discovered that I couldn't biologically father any kids. So that downward spiral started to happen because I had removed myself from the foundation of who I was, and that foundation was God, and just leaning on my faith strong. So I started to try to self-pleasure myself to numb the emotions that I was going through, and it wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy at all. It was never anything catastrophic or anything that would cause me to harm myself or to harm anyone else, but it was just harming my spirit. And I needed to find a way to really remove myself from that. So I started praying to God. When I lost my mom, I never had emotions and dreams about her presence. And I prayed to God that I would start feeling her presence and her spirit and her coming to me in dreams. And at this season, I was living in Chicago, and I remember vividly now, I woke up from a dream that I had dreamed. My mom came to me in a dream, but it was in God's voice. And she said to me clearly, "Do you miss me yet?" And when that happened, my life shook. Everything fell right back in place, because I knew that my mom was everything. And hearing her voice through God, I knew that God was everything that I was missing. And that's when I started really leaning back on the Bible verse that she instilled in me: with God, all things are possible. So the first thing that I really started doing during that season is stepping back into being intentional about building a relationship with my dad, because that was one of those opportunities to bridge the gap of my emotions and to free myself of becoming the man that God wanted me to be. And I felt it was my responsibility now to be my best, not just for myself, but to be my best for God. And I leaned heavy during that season on Romans 5:5. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. And during that season, the word hope meant the most to me, because I did feel some shame just from those challenges that I was facing during that time. So God switched me, and you hear that a lot during testimonies or transformations, or just something radical happening in people's lives. God shifted me. I also rewind a little bit back to that season is where I met my wife, and my wife became a pillar of the person that I can really lean on and to encourage me and help support me during that season. And now, during that season, I look back, and it's really when I started building my own relationship with God, and not someone else's relationship that, that was just brought down from what they experienced. So switching from self mode to God mode, life started to happen for me. So transitioning into the fourth quarter, becoming more God-like and loving on others is part of my DNA and who I aspire to be now. So God was prepping me for the biggest legacy journey that I ever could dream of, envision, and imagine. And that responsibility is twofold now, is to carry the torch in my family and my family's legacy of making sure that everyone is rooted in the Word of God, being a disciple for God, sharing stories about how good God is, praying for others, loving on others. And then the second envelope of that twofold process is the legacy now that I have a son to bear my last name and to continue the life that God has planned for me. My wife and I spent 2.5 years of a journey praying for the opportunity to become parents, and we started an adoption process. And that adoption process and God's promise was filled last year in June of 2023 for my wife and I. So God raised me for a time such as this and all the lessons that I've learned in this life. So being a voice in my son's life now and leading my wife the way that God has chosen me to lead as a man of God is something that is truly special. And at the beginning, I talked about my life is a story of patience and endurance. When I found out I couldn't biologically have any kids, that was 13 years ago. 13 years fast forward now, God has fulfilled one of those promises. So it hasn't been easy. It was a lot of prayer, a lot of faith, knowing that God was going to deliver, and a lot of challenges during that season, and having a lot of questions about, God, what's next for me? And I always just understand that God, He loves us. And whenever we take what we have inside of us from Him, and we apply that in our lives, the best can happen for our lives. So Psalms 37:4, in this season, one of the Bible verses that really taps into my heart. So delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. And that's exactly what God is doing. And God can do that for you as well when you stay faithful and committed to all the promises that He does have. So if I can encourage any one of you that is listening, just know that God has a plan and a purpose for your life. And amazing things are ahead. And don't ever think that your story is less than, even if it's not something that has moved mountains. Any small detail, any struggle, any challenge, any encouragement that you can provide to someone else really goes a long way. And God loves you, and I definitely love you. So you should keep loving people as well and being your best for people.